Long before European explorers ever dreamed of colonizing Africa, a woman ruled a vast empire with an iron sword and a mind sharper than any blade. Her name was Amina of Zazzau, a warrior, a strategist, and a queen whose story would thunder across centuries. To understand her greatness, we must journey back more than 400 years, to a time before the British set foot in northern Nigeria, when the House of City-States flourished as hubs of trade, learning, and power. Zazzau, known today as Zaria, was one of these 7 great house-states. It sat at the crossroads of the legendary Trans-Saharan trade routes that connected West Africa to North Africa and the Middle East. Caravans laden with salt, horses, and fine cloth from the north would arrive, exchanging their goods for gold, leather, and cola nuts from the south. In this thriving world of commerce and fierce competition, Zazzau stood proud, kingdom-rich in culture and ambition. Amina was born into its royal family around 1533 AD. Her father was the wise king Nikato, and her mother was the formidable queen Bakwa Turunku, the very founder of the city of Zaria. From her mother, Amina inherited not just royal blood, but an unbreakable spirit and the heart of a true leader. Even as a child, Amina was different. While other girls learned household duties, Amina was drawn to the training grounds, where warriors perfected their skill with spears and bows. She trained alongside the palace guards, mastering the arts of battle, horsemanship, and swordplay. The men who initially mocked her soon learned to respect her, for she fought with the precision of a lioness and the courage of 10 men. By her teenage years, Amina was already a proven fighter, leading mock battles and commanding small units on patrol. The court historians began to whisper, "This girl was born for war." When her father passed away, the throne went to her younger brother, Karama, as was the custom. But Amina's influence only grew stronger. She became his most trusted advisor and the commander of the royal cavalry, the heart of Zazzau's military might. The Hauser were renowned for their cavalry, fierce warriors on swift, armored horses. Under Amina's command, they became a disciplined, unstoppable force feared across the northern plains. Her strategic genius shone bright. She reorganized the army, introduced new formations, and trained elite units that could strike deep into enemy territory with lightning speed. Through her leadership, Zazzau's power began to expand even before she wore the crown. Then, the day that would change everything arrived. Her brother Karama died, leaving the throne without a strong successor. The chiefs and elders turned to the one person they knew could lead them through the storm, Amina. It was a bold choice. Women had ruled in parts of Africa before, but few had ever commanded armies or wielded power on such a grand scale. But the people of Zazzau remembered her courage, her victories, and her wisdom. And so Amina was crowned Queen of Zazzau, the warrior queen destined to lead the Hausa Empire to its greatest heights. Her coronation marked the dawn of a new era. As the drums of Zaria thundered and her people cheered, Amina stood tall, her sword glinting in the sun. She swore before her ancestors and her people that Zazzau would never bow to any power. From that day forward, she was no longer just Queen Amina Sheh, became Amina the Conqueror. When Queen Amina ascended the throne, the world around her was a chessboard of rivalries. Powerful Hausa kingdoms like Kano and Katsina vied for control of the lucrative trade routes. Farther away, great empires like Songhai and Bornu cast long shadows over the Sahel. But where others saw chaos, Amina saw opportunity. Almost immediately after her coronation, she launched one of the most remarkable military campaigns in African history. The Kano Chronicle, an ancient historical record, states that she made war on all the towns to the south and to the north, taking them in turn. Amina did not rule from a palace. She ruled from the battlefield. She gathered her generals, trained thousands of new soldiers, and forged alliances with neighboring Fulani and Nupe warriors. Her army, said to have numbered over 20,000 soldiers in cavalry, became the most feared force across the savannah. And at the head of every charge was Amina herself, clad in armor, mounted on her war horse, her sword flashing under the desert sun. The first major kingdom to fall was Kano, a wealthy city-state that had grown rich from trade. Amina's strategy was brilliant in its simplicity. Strike fast, seize their trade routes, and cut off their supply of horses and salt. After Kano, she marched on Kachina. Her armies met fierce resistance but ultimately triumphed. The news spread like wildfire. The woman who fights like thunder has conquered the north. But Amina's vision went far beyond mere conquest. She understood that power without economic control was fleeting. So, wherever she conquered, she built. She erected massive earthen fortifications, military camps, and trading outposts. These structures, known today as the Amina Walls, stretched for miles across the Hausa region. Many of their remnants still stand in northern Nigeria's silent monuments to her vision of protection and permanence. Under her rule, the empire flourished. The trade routes she controlled connected Zazzau to distant lands like Timbuktu and the far reaches of the Sahara. Merchants from across the continent paid tribute to pass safely through her territories. Gold, leather, and cloth flowed into Zazzau's markets, and its wealth became legendary. Yet, Queen Amina was more than just a conqueror. She was a masterful diplomat. In the lands she subdued, she rarely deposed the local rulers. Instead, she demanded tribute and loyalty, creating a vast network of vassal states that extended her influence without the need for constant warfare. Her reign brought a rare stability to the Hausa Plains, ensuring peace for traders and prosperity for her people. Oral traditions paint a picture of a ruler whose intelligence matched her courage. She would hold council with elders late into the night, studying maps and planning strategies. She valued discipline above all else, in her soldiers and in herself. A famous Hausa saying attributed to her declares, "The strength of a ruler is not in her throne, but in the courage of her people." Over her 34-year reign, her influence stretched from the Niger River in the west to the borders of modern-day Chad in the east. She transformed Zazzau from a regional kingdom into a sprawling empire. She became a legend in her own lifetime, a warrior who never married, a queen who chose a battle tent over a palace, and a ruler both revered and feared by all. But every great empire, no matter how mighty, faces new challenges. As Amina expanded her dominion, she drew the attention of powerful forces, rival kings, jealous chiefs, and distant foreigners who had just begun to chart the vast African continent. Unbeknownst to her, her reign stood at the precipice of a new age, one that would test not only her power, but the very destiny of her people. As Queen Amina's empire swelled, stretching across the Hausa lands and beyond, new challenges emerged. The farther her armies marched, the more complex her rule became. Local chieftains resisted her tribute demands, border territories questioned her authority, and rival kingdoms plotted to reclaim their lost lands. To hold her vast empire together, Amina created a brilliant system of regional governors. These were often her most trusted warriors or allied rulers, tasked with managing local affairs under her watchful eye. She cemented their loyalty through strategic troop rotations, political alliances, and by making swift examples of any who dared to defy her. Her justice was famously stern, yet fair. Rebellion wasn't just met with the sword. She used negotiation, exile, and controlled integration to maintain order. But some of her greatest tests came from within her own empire. Towns that had once submitted peacefully began to resent her dominance, refusing to pay tribute or provide soldiers for her armies. In these critical moments, Amina didn't just send her generals, she led the campaigns herself. Her presence on the front lines was a powerful inspiration to her soldiers, and her strategic genius allowed her to crush rebellions with surgical precision. She would strike quickly, isolating defiant city-states from their allies and installing new, loyal leadership. While managing internal threats, Amina also kept a vigilant eye on her powerful neighbors. To the west, the mighty Songhai Empire, though weakened by its own troubles, occasionally threatened her vital trade routes. To the north, desert tribes posed a constant risk to the caravan paths that were the lifeblood of her kingdom. But Amina's diplomacy was as sharp as her sword. She skillfully forged non-aggression pacts, exchanged valuable gifts with rival rulers, and established buffer zones to secure her realm's borders. She understood that fighting on all fronts would drain her strength, so she chose her battles with incredible care and foresight. Over the decades, Amina's fame spread far beyond her borders. Bards composed epic songs about her conquests, and merchants traveling on long caravan routes whispered tales of her disciplined armies and unwavering rule. Zazzau, once just one of many city-states, had transformed into the central power hub of the region. Its walls stood taller, its trade caravans stretched longer, and its armies were more seasoned than any other. But even as her empire reached its zenith, new ominous threats began to gather on the distant horizon. European ships started appearing along the West African coasts, and explorers brought news of foreign powers carving out spheres of influence across the continent. Though the British had not yet marched inland, their distant presence began to cast long, dark shadows over all the kingdoms of the region. Some of Amina's rivals, sensing a shift in power, tried to secretly curry favor with these new European arrivals. They sought foreign weapons and backing to overthrow their regional competitors. Zazzau's neighboring states began to view alliances with these outsiders as a potential advantage in the future. In response, Amina fortified her borders, increased surveillance on the caravan routes, and sent her own envoys to distant lands to gather intelligence on these emerging powers from beyond the sea. Tragically, Amina would never fully grasp the scale of the European threat that was to come. According to most traditions, she died while on a campaign, perhaps during an attempt to conquer the city of Qarafa or another rebellious state. The exact circumstances of her death are still debated by historians. Some say she fell honorably in battle. Others whisper that she was betrayed by conspirators from within her own court. Whatever the truth, her death marked the end of her extraordinary rule. But her legend was already permanently etched into the annals of history. After she passed, a silence fell over Zazzau. For the first time in decades, the clang of her sword no longer echoed on the battlefield. But her name, her very presence, refused to fade. It was as if every grain of sand carried on the northern winds still whispered of the woman who ruled not from behind a throne, but as a conqueror leading from the front. Her death left a vacuum, but it also left a legacy so vast that no invader could ever erase it. The city of Zazzau continued to stand, protected by the very walls she had built, and governed by the system she had established. Trade continued to flourish along the routes she had secured. And Hausa merchants carried her story as far as Timbuktu, Kano, and Bornu. To them, Amina was more than just a ruler. She was a symbol of what African leadership could achieve before the tides of foreign domination swept across the continent. As the centuries passed, the land she had once ruled began to change. The whispers of European ambition grew into footsteps, and those footsteps soon became armies. By the late 19th century, British colonial forces marched through the same territories that Amina had once unified under her banner. One by one, many of the Hausa city-states fell. But in every act of resistance, her name was invoked.
Ow.
Among the elders and warriors who stood against the colonial invaders, the story of Amina was retold like a battle hymn, powerful reminder that their ancestors had built great cities, governed mighty empires, and fought gallantly on horseback long before any foreigner had set foot on their soil. Even when early British records dismissed her as a mere legend, the people of Zazzau knew the truth. The ruins of her fortifications, those famous Amina walls, still stood as undeniable proof of the empire she had built with vision and steel. For African women, Queen Amina became more than just a historical figure. She became a mirror, a testament to the fact that power, intelligence, and courage are not defined by gender. Her reign inspired generations of women who aspired to leadership in politics, education, and the arts, women who saw in Amina the courage to rise above any and all limitations. Today, Queen Amina's image has been reborn in classrooms, films, art, and cultural festivals. Statues of her stand proudly across Nigeria, her sword held high as a beacon of national pride and unwavering resistance. Her name adorns schools, military barracks, public squares, a constant reminder that before colonization, there were great African empires built by brilliant African minds. But her true legacy isn't forged in bronze or carved in marble. It lives on in the powerful idea she proved centuries ago, that power can be just, that leadership can be both fierce and visionary, and that a single individual, driven by purpose, can redefine an entire civilization. When we speak of African greatness, Queen Amina stands among the foremost, a warrior, strategist, a builder, a woman who shaped history not with words but with decisive action. And though centuries have passed, her story continues to echo from the ancient dust of Zazzau's walls to the hearts of every person who believes in the strength of their heritage. Because in every tale of courage, every struggle for freedom, and every act of resilience, Queen Amina still rides. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey into the past. If you were inspired by the incredible story of Queen Amina, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next exploration of history's most fascinating figures. We'll see you in the next video.